we mentioned, or we talked briefly there about Canada. You grew up there, didn't you?
Yes.
When you look at the country now, I mean, it's now become this byword for kind of, woke dystopia, if you like.
Yes, right.
Why Canada? Why did it happen with Canada?
Well, it happened, and this is kind of an argument I make, is that the seeds were already, the ground was already laid. It was fertile ground for the woke revolution.
Oh.
And in fact, so much of what we think of as woke extremism, actually, if we go back to an earlier era of multiculturalism, that was a kind of wokeness before its time, but just not as extreme. So Canada, for example, what happens is you have the decline of the British Empire, the end of Canadian loyalism, and the replacement of the British identity, which was really what defined Canada as opposed to the United States, as they were loyal to the crown in the Revolution. And so the loyalists founded Canada in sort of the late 18th century. That was the basis for Canadian identity, with the exception of the French, which is a bit more complicated. But British Empire goes away and they have to find a new identity. It's just around the time of the 1960s, and so the country is completely reinvented from scratch as a left-wing country. That had never been its identity. It's complete fiction. And the other fiction is this idea of multiculturalism. There were almost no Canadians who were not of British or French ancestry. Very small, maybe 10%. But Canada adopts this policy called the Multiculturalism Act of 1971, at a time when there really wasn't much multicultural reality on the ground. But that sort of lays the seed. It says there's an obligation to promote the multicultural character of the country. So that's already there in 1971. It gets sort of given a bit of steroid injection in the 1980s. And then pretty soon we have a constitution, a new constitution. Again, that's a new constitution which was adopted. And one of its provisions, for example, allows for racial discrimination, as long as that's achieving a quote-unquote social purpose. Now, maybe for a long time that wasn't used. Yes. Yeah. So, unlike the U.S., where the First Amendment, not the First Amendment, but the Civil Rights Act outlaws discrimination on the basis of race, the Canadian Constitution and a number of court cases seem to show that, yeah, you can discriminate against white people all you want, against men, whoever. You now have sentencing where somebody who is Indigenous or Black can have a lighter sentence by claiming systemic racism, whatever, in the system. Just citing that. Yeah. You have university admissions jobs that are advertised only for non-whites or Indigenous or whatever. So that's openly being done now. Now, it wasn't openly being done as much in the past, but the door was open.
Yes.
And I would say people were open to it. It's just those doors hadn't been pushed open. So you had a country where, because of this kind of multiculturalism seedbed, the ground was primed for extremism, and there's no resistance to it. It just steamrolls right through the system. Yeah. Now, it is the case that there is a conservative leader who is a little bit more populist sounding, who is currently, who is willing to criticize the media. So the media is completely progressive. There's almost no opposition in the media. There's one paper called the National Post, which is better, and there are small new media outlets like True North. But the mainstream media dominates to the extent, and I'll just give you a statistic here. So there was this moral panic, this hoax about 215 Indigenous children buried outside the school in Western Canada. There's not a single body that has been found through any scientific method. There's not any record of any children missing, that could be accounted for. So the whole thing is a complete scam. The media has completely run with that story, and now when it was exposed, and there was a piece that came out in the National Post saying, look, we haven't got any evidence here. There were no other media were willing to take down stories or recant or anything. And in a poll that in a study which is going to be coming out soon, roughly 65%, 2/3 of Canadians believe in the 215 mass graves myth. So the entire country has been deluded by this myth. And the Conservative Party is unwilling. Even this new so-called populist leader is unwilling to take on that sacred cow. I mean, so you've got mass delusion in the media and in the political class. Now, it is true that this conservative leader is probably going to win the election, and Trudeau's going to go. That's good. But it's still not particularly radical. And what's happening in the schools, in the government, this indigenous religion is not really being challenged. And you've got mass migration on a scale that would make the British seem restrictive. So yeah,
don't hear much about that here with Canada. You hear about America and here, of course, but not Canada.
Yeah, I mean, a country with, maybe 2/3 of Britain's population, with a 1.2 million newcomers coming last year. Essentially now, even the National Bank economists are saying we could be creating an economic trap that is going to damage the country. Like, even the respectable technical economists are saying this is terrible, and the housing crisis is worse than Britain's. And they're saying, there's just no way we can house these people, And it's not just immigrants, it's temporary workers, it's students. You've just got this massive wave, and even the Conservative Party, because of the so-called immigration consensus, right? So a taboo over reducing immigration, they're not willing to go against Trudeau. And the whole system is completely out of control. There is a populist party. Problem is, in a way, that people are so keen on getting rid of Trudeau, which I understand, the guy is revolting. So if the priority is to get rid of this person, you have to go with the most likely candidate. And that's the problem. So because Trudeau is so awful, people just want him out. So fine, you vote for the Conservatives, but the Conservatives have no real incentive necessarily to be tough on migration or on woke.
What is the name, just for future reference, what is the name of the populist party?
Oh, the Populist Party is called the People's Party of Canada, PPC, and they're very good. But I don't think they'll get a break until the Conservatives get in and people see that not doing anything on these issues.
Well, thank you very much for that analysis. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.
That's it for today. Thanks.